Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. I trust that you are well this glorious day. It is Thursday. It is Juneteenth. Uh, if that means anything to you, it doesn't mean everything. It doesn't mean anything to a lot of people, and that's fine. For a lot of reasons, I'm still kind of salty about Juneteenth. So I don't know if I'm gonna do anything. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything about Juneteenth. I just don't know. But today's program here this afternoon is about the Florida Legislature. They did something that other states pretend they can't do. Other places pretend they can't do. The total budget, last year's budget for the state of Florida was $118.9 billion. $118.9 billion. It's an incredible. It's an outrageous amount of money. Think about that. Billion with a B. Well, the Florida Legislature, in the 105th day of a 60-day session, they're only supposed to be in session for 60 days, which is about 30 days too many, in my opinion. Um, Managed to push out a new budget. And we'll tell you what that amount is right after this. All right, you see above me is, you see that? That's the number of subscribers we have on the channel right now. 890. If you do just a little bit of research, you'll find out that this particular YouTube channel has been up for years. Years. Now, I don't think it's had the focus. This is all on me. I'm not blaming anybody else. It's all on me. I don't think this has had the focus that it's had in recent years, and especially in recent months. But our goal is 1,000. We've got to get over the 1,000 threshold. Now, what I've learned is that only about 10% of all YouTube channels are over 1,000 subscribers. So it isn't like I feel like, well, everybody's doing it and we should do it too. No, no. Actually, only one of every 10 YouTube channels has 1,000 subscribers. Well, that tells you is how many YouTube channels are out there, because most of the time that most of the YouTube channels that you watch have over 1,000 subscribers. That just tells you how many of them are out there. 1,000 is the front door, the beginning of the possibility of being monetized. And but if we don't get to there, we can't get to any of the rest of them. Even if I have a video that goes quote viral and has several billion hours of views, if I don't have 1,000 subscribers, zero dinero, zero dinero. So we're trying to get this number up. So if you could help us get this number up, by, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to. I understand, because we did that when we started. Yeah, everybody we subscribed to, we hit that notification bell, and my phone just went off nonstop, ding, 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 as people produce videos. It was completely unmanageable. But if you would, that would be awesome. Listen, and the big thing is, tell your friends. Please tell your friends. Tell your friends. All right, we're going to get back to the story. We're going to get back to this story of the Florida Legislature. We know that our last year's budget was $118.9 billion. This year's budget was $115.1 billion. This is down $3.8 billion from last year. Yes, only about a 3.2% cut. and it's $500 million less than Governor DeSantis' original request. Congratulations. Things to note: the reserves, because people worry about the reserves, especially because it's June, are at about 12.4 billion dollars, including $7 billion that's unallocated in general revenue. That's just out there to be used in an emergency or whatever. $4.9 billion, almost $5 billion, out there in the budget stabilization fund. Make sure everything stays cool. So the reserves are still very robust. We're not living on the razor's edge, and I think that's extremely important, that we're not living on the razor's edge. Here's some major moves in the budget. The tax cuts that that they often talk about, especially all the talking heads and the politicians, amounted to $1.3 billion. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's half of the reduction, and it eliminates the business rent tax permanently. Business rent. So if you're a business and you rent a space, you used to get taxed by the state because you were a business. Now, a lot of people are thinking that this helps the huge business. It does help the huge business, but it also helps the small business person as well, who has to rent a space. And some people go, well, there's so much you could do online. You can't cut hair online. You can't fix cars online. You can't fix teeth online. You can't. There's a bunch of stuff you can't do online. There are a lot of things that somebody has to walk into a storefront to get done. And if you're renting that space, that cost for you just went down forever. It also introduces state sales tax exemptions for items, and these were, they'd have to vote on this every year, but right now they don't have to vote. They don't have to vote on them anymore. Introduces recurring sales tax exemptions for things like hurricane supplies. Around this time of year, there's always a hurricane tax holiday. So you can go out and buy generators and tents and tarps and all the things that you need for hurricane supplies. Now, if you're a Floridian, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And there's also a back to school tax holiday as well. And that includes clothing under $75. That includes things like computers and laptops and tablets, all sorts of stuff, and all that back to school stuff. And of course, there is a tax exemption permanently on clothing that's less than $75. That really helps people who aren't going out there to Neiman Marcus, because you can't buy a T-shirt at Neiman Marcus for less than $75. And right now, the clothing that I'm wearing outside of this shirt, because this was a $9 shirt, but unfortunately the pants that I'm wearing, because I'm the weird size. I'm wide and short. These pants at like DXL are like $80, which is ridiculous, but it's what they cost. So they wouldn't be covered. But a lot of my clothes from now on are going to be covered and be tax-free forever. That's the kind of reduction that we need. There's also staff reductions. Over 2,200 vacant staff roles have been eliminated. Now, 2,200 people, it doesn't seem like a lot, except if they were standing in your living room. And these weren't people who have jobs who have been fired. That's not what this is. And I know that there are going to be people who push this. He fired a whole bunch of people. He didn't fire a whole bunch of people. He basically there were jobs that were vacant that they just eliminated. Anybody in that job? No, we don't need it in, apparently. We're operating. So, yes, the people who are working in state jobs are going to have to, the cavalry is not coming. If you are in a position to hire and you had some openings, you don't have those openings anymore. And I have some relatives who work in the state who, one in particular, I'm sure that they were looking forward to hiring some people to help, but I'm sure that they had that meeting Friday and said, hey, listen, or yesterday and said, yeah, we were looking to get some help. It's just going to be us. It's just going to be us. Get some rest. Get some rest. Stay hydrated because no, the cavalry is not coming. Now, 2,200 roles seems like a lot, but it's only about a 1.5% of the total workforce. It's not a lot of people. But some raises for the current staff are coming. Now, I can tell you the percentage of raise, and it doesn't meet the raise. I mean, it doesn't meet the inflation rate. It's 2%. It doesn't meet the inflation rate. And if you're a first responder, a police officer, or a state trooper, or a firefighter, they are going to get up to 15%. So Florida is taking care of its first responders for sure. How about education? Education. We have in Florida a real live voucher program. Real live voucher program. As a matter of fact, this voucher program just got a boost of $4 billion. $4 billion in our private and religious school vouchers. And the people who will say, well, this is going to hurt public schools. No, because there was an increase in funding for K-12 teacher raises, Bright Future scholarships, and safety grants to schools. There was an increase for funding for K through 12 as well, public schools. And because it is June, $750 million in reserve, it's going to be a reserve added annually. Nearly $1 billion, or $750 million added annually to the emergency prep fund. Now, we had a vote on that because that was a constitutional amendment. We had to vote on that again, I guess, maybe this fall in 2025. Yeah, probably. Also, an emergency prep $3 million for immigration enforcement support for local jails, because the governor has said that all our local police are going to cooperate with ICE, which is going to take more people, which is going to take more resources, and that's not going to entirely fall on the local governments. So there's $3 million for immigration enforcement support. Not a lot of money, but some for sure. All right, now let's talk about the context of all this. Again, the 105-day session was extended well beyond the normal 60 days. Now, like I said before, I think they ought to meet 30 days. I think they ought to meet 30 days and have DoorDash and never leave the room except to pee and poop, and just get it all done. And the rest of the time, they need to spend in their districts, listening to you. But they don't. But this time, 105 days in Tallahassee. 105 days. Okay. Why? Because Republicans had some squabbles, notably between the legislature and the governor. So over tax cuts and some programming funding things. But as it turns out now, the governor has the line item veto power as he reviews the bill before July 1st, the fiscal year deadline. So what the governor can still do, this budget may be less. He can't add things, but he can take away things. They look through and go, what the heck is that? Gone. What the heck is that? Gone. Because he now has line item veto. All right, let's look at some takeaways and what we have to look forward to. 4 themes we're going to deal with. We're going to deal with fiscal discipline, a political shift, the impact on citizens, and preparedness. Let's look at fiscal discipline. The $3.8 billion cut and a hefty reserve signal caution amid economic uncertainty and the possible federal funding shifts. There are going to be some federal funding shifts, and Florida has decided that they are going to take care of themselves. That what happens at the federal level and their funding shifts are not going to too much adversely affect what happens here in the state of Florida. Smart. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, that's smart. Not just scream and yell about, oh my God, oh, Trump, oh, what's going on? No. You have the power to help yourself, help yourself. There is going to be a political shift here. The legislature flexed its muscles, overrides, withheld priorities like Hope Florida, which was the governor's wife's project, and shoring up some independence from the governor. They didn't just go along. They didn't. They actually cut more than the governor wanted, actually. And Hope Florida was one of those things, right? Now, how it impacts you and I. The business tax relief helps the climate for employers. Now, if you are a person who is an employee, if your employer has life a little easier, that's good for you too. When the cost of renting the space that you work in is less, two things could happen. You could get that extra money. You probably won't, but you could. But because the cost of renting the space is less, the possibility for higher profits and profitability of the business is there, which means you may have a job longer. Families gain via targeted sales taxes. Of course, in Florida, who doesn't wait for this time of year to go out and buy the stuff you need for hurricane season? You don't buy that stuff in January. You wait. You wait. And now that we know that there's going to be these things that are in the budget or that are law every year, now maybe now you don't have to wait. Maybe if you have time and money in December and you want to make sure that you get a generator and get a good one for this time of year, now you do it. It's great. You got some clothes you need to buy under $75, especially for shorts and t-shirts and that kind of stuff. Now we can. Now that all saves us a little cash. And of course, back to school. You all wait, for book bags and computers and tablets and that kind of stuff because of the back to school tax exemptions. Now, if they could only put in a tax holiday for gasoline, that would rock. Preparedness, because we are in June. The emergency, quote, lockbox, subject to a 2026 ballot vote, what we talked about already, shows forward-thinking financial planning. We're not going to get caught short if indeed we need it. And and I pray we don't need it. I pray that we have a very quiet summer, storm-wise. I pray that we have an extremely quiet summer. We're getting some rain every day, but we get rain every day in the summer. This is our, quote, rainy season. And where I live, in the part of Florida, is all the water that we drink, that we water our yards with, we make our coffee with, comes from the sky. There's very little underground water. Everything comes from the sky. So we need to capture that. We don't need enough water down in front of my house to float a boat. We don't need that. But the steady rain is a good thing. So here's the bottom line. This is, you'll see online. This is the biggest cut in tax cut in Florida history. It's not, but it is a recalibration of priorities. With economic headwinds and internal power structures, lawmakers opted for leaner spending. So if it can be done in Florida, it can be done in D.C. Right? Targeted relief, back to school holiday, hurricane supplies, that kind of stuff, and shored up fiscal guards. But what this means in practice depends on the vetoes, whether the reserve amendment passes, and how federal funding shakes out in the coming years. That's what we're talking about here. Now, we're going to continue talking about this because I think that Florida can be a template for not just other states, but the government in D.C. as well. Again, this number here, the 890 number, our goal today, and it is already 2:14 in the afternoon. Did you hear that? It's about time. God, it was. This is what it was like when I was a kid here. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it was thunder and rain, and we thought the sky would fall out. But by 5 o'clock, it was all over. The streets were steaming because they were so hot. The rain was over. The humidity, 462,000%. I think we all had gills back in the 60s because that's how we had to breathe. I love it. I love it. Anyway, we got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody. And for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. Remember, subscribe. Subscribe. Let's get this number from 890 to 1,000. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.